So let's talk about the Pampa biome. The Pampa is one of the smallest biomes in Brazil. Occupies only slightly over 2% of the country, and it's located in the south here, only in one state, the state of Rio Grande do Sul, the southern Rio Grande. So it's only here, and different from the other biomes that we talked about, most of the Pampa is not in Brazil. So in Brazil, we have only a small part of the Pampa. Whereas, you know, for most of the other biomes that we talked about, most of them are in Brazil, actually. Its limits are the Atlantic forest here to the north, the Patagonia to the south, the Andes to the west, and the Chaco to the sort of northwest. So the name Pampa comes from the Quechua language, from the indigenous people from the Andes. It means a flat surface, a plain. Another name that you're going to see for that in Brazil is Campos Sulinos, which means like southern grasslands, which is not very, I mean, it's used sometimes, but not very often. But usually the Campos Sulinos means not only the Pampas, but also high elevation grasslands in the Atlantic forest of southern Brazil in the states of Paraná and Santa Catarina. Okay, so the Campos Sulinos is actually usually more than just the Pampa. So the Pampa as a whole occupies 750,000 square kilometers here. In southern Brazil, the whole country of Uruguay, and eastern and northeastern Argentina here. So most of it is in Argentina, and so only a small part is in Brazil, only slightly over 176,000 square kilometers in Brazil. The elevation, of course, is mostly flat, but it actually goes from the sea level to almost reaching 500 meters on the western borders of the whole Pampa ecosystem. The climate is temperate to subtropical. So in Brazil, it's mostly subtropical because it's the northern part, and different from most of the other biomes that we talked about. This one has actually 4 well-marked seasons. The temperatures usually are between 15 and 18 degrees centigrade on average, but they can go as low as -10 and as high as +38 degrees. So it could be very hot during the summer and quite cold during the winter. You can have snow sometimes in some places, but it's not very common. Precipitation is between 1,200 and 1,600 millimeters. Lightning is very common, so there's sometimes intense storms and lots of tornadoes. I think after the southern United States, that's the second place for tornadoes in the world. So here you see a storm coming, and very strong storm. So it's kind of a flat land with some water bodies in some areas, and so mostly grasslands with a few shrubs and trees. And the soil is very good for agriculture. So most of the landscape is used for agricultural purposes. So in terms of geology, there's we can divide this area into 4 main geological formations. You have the oldest rocks, which are in this pink part here. This is the Rio Grande do Sul Shield. It's Precambrian, so we're talking about more than 500 million years ago. Okay, those are crystalline rocks, usually granite. Then you have a central depression here in this light green. The central depression is the result of a subsidence, the land lower down during the Mesozoic, so a while ago, hundreds of millions of years ago. And then you have the Serra Geral, which is this area here. It's mostly from volcanic activity, so it's extrusion of magma from the earth, and that's it's more recent. It's from the late Cretaceous, but then we're talking about 60 65, 66 million years ago. And then finally, the youngest area is the continental shelf here, near the coast, where you have two large lagoons, the two marine lagoon, and the largest one, which is the Patos Lagoon. Patos means ducks in Portuguese, so Lagoa dos Patos, it's the Patos Lagoon, and the Atlantic Ocean here. And this is a more recent, this is a Cenozoic, so less than 60 million years ago. And that's a sedimentary base. The soils of the pampas, they're usually very fragile, okay, and sometimes they're sandy, and then if you remove the vegetation, the grassland, you get a sandification, so it becomes kind of like looks like a desert. It's not a desert because it actually rains in these areas, but the soil is very dry and very poor in nutrients if you remove the vegetation. So the vegetation is quite sensitive. In green here, you have the limits of the Pampa. Okay, so the Pampa, this is the state of Rio Grande do Sul in Brazil. And so the northern part of the state is Atlantic forest, and the southern part of the state is Pampa. Those are the main rivers here: Jacuí, Santa Maria, the Ibicuí here, which drains to the Uruguay River. There's a Negro River down here too. The vegetation types, even though it's all sort of mostly grasslands, they vary in terms of appearance and also species composition. You have seasonal forest here in this area, this green area here. It's also like a seasonal forest, a deciduous forest. Then you have this area right next to it. You have like a shrubby field. So it's a field, but with many shrubs, like in this picture here. You have some areas that are called like mixed fields, where you have different species composition, like this one here, which is called the goat's beard, which is the name of this grass that dominates the landscape in this area here. You have sometimes fields that are on deep soils, and those are the best for agriculture, so they're usually disturbed by agricultural activities. You have the coastal fields along the coast here. You have sandy fields, the pink area here, which are called areal in Portuguese, which is something like this, looks like a sand dune. You have the very special habitat called park fields, which is in Portuguese espinilho, which is only found here in the west part here. And then you have fields on shallow soils like this one here, which like rock outcrops. The park fields or the espinilho looks like this. You have clumps of trees in certain areas. So that's kind of the variation that you have in this landscape. This red pink area here is forest. Okay, so the Pampas is only this area down here, and also enters here through the northern part of the state. In terms of biodiversity, it may look like these fields and grasslands don't have a lot of diversity, and we usually think of forests having more diversity, and of course it's true that forests have a lot of diversity. But if you think on a 1 square meter, one area, actually you have more species in these fields than in the forests, and even in the Cerrado, which has also a lot of species. Okay. In total, you have 2,150 species of seed plants in the Pampas. Okay, that's a lot of species. Of course, many species are in the grass family, Poaceae. Okay, so you have several different kinds of grasses, more than 400 species, different species of native grasses. One very important family is Asteraceae, the daisy family, with beautiful flowers. So more species even than the grass family. Okay. Another important family is Fabaceae, the legumes, like represented here by some really nice flowers too. More than 200 species. The sedges, which look like grasses, Cyperaceae, also with more than 100 species, almost 150 species. The vervains and the cactus also present here. The cactaceae, more than 50 species. The iris, and also the mallows, the malvaceae, with a significant number of species. So those are the families that are more diverse. In terms of vertebrate diversity, we have here we have 158 species of reptiles and 84 species of amphibians recorded for the Pampas. Put the pointer here. Okay. And so these are some representatives, like the hognose snake. Also some geckos, like these two geckos are endemic to the Pampas, and also some lizards in the reptiles. And then the amphibians, you have amphibians that are endemic to the southern, so like 37% of the species are endemic to the Pampas, or actually to the southern fields, and some of them to the Pampas, which are the ones in yellow here, like this, these three frogs here, and these two here are typical of the Pampas. These species here are widely distributed, and then you have some that prefer the Atlantic forest biome. In terms of birds, you have almost 100 species recorded. Most of them actually occur in the Pampas and the Atlantic forest, like all those species down here. They're not exclusive, they're not typical of the Pampas. But there's some species like these two here that are typical of the Pampas, occur only there, endemic to the biome. In terms of mammals, again, many, some here, the ones in yellow here are Atlantic forest animals. Half of them occur both in the Pampas and the Atlantic forest, like the bamboo rat here, these two foxes, the 9-banded armadillo, the 6-banded armadillo, this deer here, the capybara. So they occur, they're widely distributed. But some species like these three here, these three rodents here, like tucutucos, which is a special family of subterranean rodents that only occur in southern Brazil. In Brazil, they only occur in southern Brazil, only in the Pampa here. So some species have really restricted ranges. So they live in underground burrows that they dig. And that's a grass mouse that's also endemic to this region. So we have more than 100 species of mammals, 16 of them endemic to the Pampa, including the tucutucos that I mentioned. In terms of human occupation, the earliest occupations of the region were probably more than 10,000 years ago, with the first indigenous peoples. And then with the European colonization, following the European arrival in Brazil, you have especially Portuguese and Spanish colonizers in the region of the Pampas, which is different from the north of the state of Rio Grande do Sul, which is Atlantic forest, which is mostly Italians and Germans and Polish people that colonize. So you have different patterns of colonization. With time, livestock and monoculture like rice, soybean, corn, and wheat were establishing as the main economic activities in the Pampas. And then, in the 18th century, you have a consolidation of the culture that we call the gauchos, right? So then here represented by a gaucho wearing the typical trousers and coat and hat and the red scarf here. That's a typical gaucho, which not only for Brazil but also works for the whole Pampa, for Argentina and Uruguay as well. You know, drinking the tea, the erva mate, which is the tea that's served in the special cup. And the leather industry, okay, it was because of the livestock, the leather industry is consolidated in this region. From the 1960s on, there's a very sharp intensification of the activities, both livestock and agriculture. And then other things came like the pinus and eucalyptus plantations for production of wood and paper, mostly wood. And also mining also becomes a problem too. So that today only 42% of the native grasslands remain, okay? And exotic and invasive species are a big problem as well. Some grasses that are used for cattle, for pasture, as pastures, and also wild boar has been introduced and it's a problem, and some other species. And the Pampa is actually the least protected of all biomes in Brazil. Only 2.7% of the Pampa is protected in protected areas. That's very low. The recommendation of the Convention on Biological Diversity is that at least 17% should be protected. So we're very far from that. So here you see like a typical cattle ranch with the cows and the Pampa landscape. You have sheep. Here you see the conversion of the Pampa into an agricultural area here, surrounded by this nice creek and the Pampa surrounding it. So here you can see that the land use here to the left. So the northern part here is forest, right? The green area is forest, and the southern area is the Pampa. Okay, so you have some urban areas, and you have intense cultivation in some areas, and then areas that have been cleaned, mostly clean. Okay. On the coast, you have the sand dunes, which are very important, a very, very fragile ecosystem where some of the tucutucos, the rodents, the subterranean rodents live, but there's a very strong pressure for building high-end houses. So people are putting a lot of pressure into building those houses, and so there's the real estate market's really intense there. And when we look at the protected areas, which is this map to the right, you see that there's virtually very few protected areas. The large ones in orange are actually in what we call environmental protected area, which is not it's not a very restrictive protected area. So I mean, of course you have some control, you cannot do anything there, but you can have land use there. You can have agriculture, you can have pastures. It's not a fully protected area like national parks or biological reserves, or even state parks, for instance. So for example, the Spinilho forest in this region here that I showed before, the park area, there's only one state park here that protects the Spinilho landscape. Also, along the coast here, you have the Taim ecological station here, which protects the area around the lakes, very important. National park here, Lagoa do Peixe, on the coastal vegetation. But you see that there's not much, all these areas in the north here, these areas here are in Atlantic forest. They're not part of the Pampa. So in the Pampa itself, there's very few, very small and far apart protected areas. So that's a big problem. Like I said, it's highly intensively used, has been intensively used for a long time, and not many protected areas there.